Battle through the heavens. Wang Chen's savage laughter caused everyone present to be stunned. A moment later, schwa sounds appeared as a countless number of eyes carried some disbelief and paused on Xiao Yan, who had suddenly stopped in the arena. Xiao Yan. That Xiao Yan who has a grudge with the Wind Lightning Pavilion. That Xiao Yan who forcefully broke the 9 heavenly lightning prison formation that the 3 great elders of the Wind Lightning Northern Pavilion had placed. The one who escaped from Fei Tian's hands. This fellow is actually Xiao Yan. Is he crazy? Tang Ying opened his mouth. His cold face revealed a stunned expression when he looked at Xiao Yan. This fool, he has really come. Mu Qingluan's pretty face was filled with shock. She had never expected that this fellow would dare to come to this lightning mountain. It is actually him, no wonder, unexpectedly, his courage has reached such an extent. Looks like he really does not hold any regard for my Wind Lightning Pavilion. Feng Qing'er's pretty eyes looked at Xiao Yan as the corner of her lips was slowly lifted into a slight arc. A faint chillness and arrogance was present in it. She had always truly hoped to have an exchange with him. She would restore the reputation of the Wind Lightning Pavilion through it. Unfortunately, she lacked the opportunity to do so last time. Lei Zunjie had also heard of Xiao Yan's name. Relying on one's strength to turn the Wind Lightning Northern Pavilion into such a miserable state was not something that an ordinary person could achieve. Fei Tian, is he that Xiao Yan? Lei Zunjie's eyes revealed a lightning glow vaguely flickering as he turned his head to Fei Tian by the side and indifferently asked. The dense-looking Huang Quan Zunjie gloatingly laughed in his heart as he clearly sensed the anger that was hidden in Lei Zunjie's voice. He shrank his body back. It was unexpected that this fellow was the Xiao Yan who had caused an uproar recently. Thus, the matter today would be a little fun. Feng Zunjie and Jian Zunjie by the sides were similarly startled because of this. Their gazes were a little strange as they observed Xiao Yan. However, they did not say anything. This was a problem of the Wind Lightning Pavilion, and it was inappropriate for them to say anything. Fei Tian clenched his fist under his sleeves. He took 2 steps forward and his sinister eyes turned to Xiao Yan in the arena as he coldly said, "Brat, take off the thing on your face." The gazes of the entire place shifted along with the voice. They all gathered on Xiao Yan. Most of the people present knew that there was a conflict between the Wind Lightning Pavilion and Xiao Yan. If Xiao Yan's identity was confirmed, this little fellow would likely be unlucky today. Regardless of how strong he would definitely be unable to successfully escape alive amid being surrounded by so many experts from the Wind Lightning Pavilion. Xiao Yan's eyes were cold as they swept over Wang Chen, who was smiling in a savage manner. Immediately, a body hurried over. Lin Yan held a long spear in his hand and appeared beside Xiao Yan with a solemn face. Finally he asked in a deep voice, "Do you want to charge out?" Xiao Yan slightly shook his head. Given the strength of the 2 of them, it was likely that their chances of successfully escaping were very low if they forcefully tried to break out. "Just leave it to me," Xiao Yan waved his hand and slowly raised his head. He immediately laughed in a cold voice as his hand grabbed his face. An item made of skin fell from it, revealing Xiao Yan's original face. Since he was already unable to hide, there was naturally no need to conceal his face any longer. "Why? Pavilion Chief Fei Tian, are you planning on attacking me again today?" Fei Tian's face turned dark and cold when he saw Xiao Yan's face, that had been deeply imprinted in his memory. His throat emitted a furious laugh as his body moved. A thunder resounded over the place and his figure suddenly disappeared. Xiao Yan's body had just trembled when Fei Tian appeared behind him in a ghost-like manner. His hand claw, which was covered by lightning, violently penetrated through Xiao Yan's chest. However, it was unfortunate that not the slightest amount of fresh blood appeared. Afterimage? Fei Tian's hand shook and the afterimage was shattered. He slowly turned around, and his eyes coldly landed Xiao Yan suspended in a spot a few dozen meters above the ground. He coldly laughed, "It has only been a couple of months since I last saw you, but your strength has improved. No wonder you are so arrogant. The Wind Lightning Pavilion is only a so-so. It specializes in the elders bullying the younger ones and using its numerical advantage to bully others." Xiao Yan's gaze was ice-cold as he stared at Fei Tian. A moment later, he suddenly let out a laugh. His eyes were raised as he looked at the expressionless Lei Zunjie in the VIP seats. He mocked, "If Lei Zunjie really feels that this little self has a great enmity with the Wind Lightning Pavilion, why don't you act personally? With your Dou Zun's strength, the little me will definitely be unable to survive one exchange from you. Why do you need to make it so troublesome?" In other words, these words of Xiao Yan had helped sever a truly dangerous roar. With his current strength, other than facing an elite Dou Zun, he would still have the ability to flee even against an expert like Fei Tian. This brat is really cunning. Jian Zunjie softly laughed before glancing at Lei Zunjie by the side, who remained expressionless. "There is no need to play these tricks in front of this venerable self, Dou Zun. There is no need for this venerable self to act in order to capture you." Lei Zunjie's gaze stared indifferently at Xiao Yan. There was a little ripple within his voice. With an elder like the Northern Pavilion in front acting, there is naturally no need for Lei Zunjie to act. In any case, these things are something that the Wind Lightning Pavilion commonly does. Moreover, if the Northern Pavilion chief fails, there is still the Western Pavilion chief and Southern Pavilion chief. Xiao Yan laughed. "Haha, brat, there is no need to speak with such thorny words. The Western and Southern Pavilions will not intervene in the matter of the Northern Pavilion." A large strong-looking man with naked arms laughed out loud in a thunder-like voice from the VIP seat. He was the pavilion chief of the Western Pavilion. However, if he did not attack at this moment, the other experts of the same generation within the Wind Lightning Pavilion would definitely not take the initiative to intervene unless Lei Zunjie gave the order. Thus, choosing whether to attack or not was a headache to him. Fei Tian struggled for a moment in his heart before a ruthless expression finally flashed across his face. This Xiao Yan had caused his Wind Lightning Northern Pavilion to lose its reputation. He would definitely not let Xiao Yan off today. After Fei Tian had made up his mind within his heart, a majestic, frightening strength slowly woke from within his body. Under the traction of this frightening aura, the layers of clouds in the distant sky emitted a rumbling sound. Silver lightning flickered within them as thunder sounded. Xiao Yan's eyes sank when he saw this. He did not expect this old fellow to be willing to end up with a bad reputation by insisting on attacking him. "Xiao Yan, run!" Lin Yan hurriedly cried out from within the arena. Fei Tian's strength was really too frightening. Even though Xiao Yan had advanced to the Dou Zone class, the gap between Xiao Yan and him was really too difficult to measure. Xiao Yan basically had no chance of victory if the two battled. Xiao Yan slightly shook his head. This place was Lightning Mountain, the headquarters of the Wind Lightning Pavilion. It was easier said than done when it came to escaping. Only by taking a risky fight would he have a chance to live. Moreover, Xiao Yan's eyes lifted up as he looked into the distance. Finally, they paused on the green-robed Feng Zunjie, who appeared extremely free and easy in the VIP seats. Was this person a trustworthy person like his teacher had mentioned? Xiao Yan would naturally not announce Yao Lao's name in public. Immediately, he inhaled a deep breath, cupped his hands together, and said in a deep voice, "Feng Zunjie, this little self wishes for you to see something." Feng Zunzhe was startled when he saw Xiao Yan suddenly speak to him. He immediately smiled and said, "Little fellow, this matter is between you and the Wind Lightning Pavilion, and it doesn't seem to be related to my venerable self, Dou Zun." Feng Zunzhe was not acquainted with Xiao Yan. Naturally he would not offend the Wind Lighting Pavilion for Xiao Yan after having just met him for the first time. This was the case even if Feng Zunzhe was not afraid of the Wind Lightning Pavilion. Feng Zunzhe knit his eyebrows and looked at the dark black object that flew over. Under a countless number of gazes, Feng Zunzhe grabbed the item with his hand. After which, he slowly opened his hand. An unusually familiar dark black ring was lying within it. The faint smile on Feng Zunzhe's face slowly stiffened the moment his eyes saw the black ring. At the same time, it appeared as if the entire stadium had stilled. At this instant, Feng Zunzhe's body seemed to transform into a statue. His eyes were dull as he stared intently at the ring with a deep spiritual imprint. A frightening storm was whistling and forming above his head. Although he did not utter a single word, everyone knew that Feng Zunzhe was currently feeling an agitation in his heart he could not hide. "No one is allowed to touch this person." The ancient voice softly lingered over the entire lightning mountain. There seemed to be a demonic strength within this voice. All the surroundings became completely still when it sounded. The expressions on the faces of a countless number of people froze at this moment. A gentle breeze blew past, carrying a completely comical dullness. No one knew just what exactly happened at this moment. However, the weight of Feng Zunzhe's words appeared exceptionally clear in this place. It was likely that hardly anyone in this Dou Qi continent dared to doubt the weight of an elite Dou Zun. Despite such a serious consequence, Feng Zunzhe had spoken without hesitation because of something that Xiao Yan had given him. At this moment, even her little head involuntarily felt a little jealous. She suddenly recalled the words that Xiao Yan had said to her back in the Heavenai mountain range, a disciple of an old friend. Mu Qinghuan's narrowed eyebrows became vertical, and she felt a little lost. Although Feng Zunzhe had many friends, their relationships were far from sufficient to reach the point where he did not hesitate to become enemies with the Wind Lightning Pavilion. Just who was this old friend? Mu Qinghuan was not the only one who had such thoughts. Almost everyone present, with the exception of Xiao Yan, was somewhat lost and shocked. A quiet atmosphere covered the entire sky. Even the churning clouds in the sky had slowly quietened at this moment. "Cuckoo, Feng Zunzhe, we can discuss this nicely." Jian Zunzhe was similarly stunned because of this. He had also not expected Feng Zunzhe to step forward. Moreover, he had stood out in a manner where there was no turning back. Huang Quan Zunzhe's eyes flickered. However, he did not speak. Instead, he was coldly laughing in his heart. Feng Zunzhe had shut his eyes in front of a countless number of gazes. He finally opened his eyes again. The emotions within were hidden deep inside his heart. Not a single word was spoken. Instead, his sight stared straight into the air where Xiao Yan was standing. His voice was hoarse. "You and he, what is your relationship?" By being able to let an elite Dou Zun reveal such an emotional fluctuation, anyone could tell that the item Xiao Yan had tossed him earlier possessed an important meaning to him. Xiao Yan inhaled a deep breath of air as he looked at Feng Zunzhe's old face. All the emotional fluctuation from earlier indicated that Yao Lao's eyesight was very good. Xiao Yan stood straight in the air. He respectfully bowed and cupped his hands to Feng Zunzhe. His voice carried pride, "Teacher and disciple." Feng Zunzhe slightly nodded. His body moved and appeared in front of Xiao Yan. There was kindness in the gaze, which he used to look at Xiao Yan. He softly said, "This is the answer that I want to hear the most. However, you need to provide me with evidence." Xiao Yan smiled. He extended his hand and pointed to the fire seal on his forehead. After which, a tiny wisp of a dense white flame swiftly sprang onto the tip of his finger. Bone-chilling flame. Feng Zunzha's eyes were startled when he saw the tiny dense white flame. He was not unfamiliar with this flame. Back then, if this flame had not been there when he was in a critical state, it was likely that the current Feng Zunzha would not. Moreover, all of this was strong evidence that could prove the relationship between Xiao Yan and Yao Lao. Feng Zunzha slowly raised his head as he inhaled a breath of air. His voice was hoarse as he said, "Old fellow, you have made it difficult for me to find you all these years." Xiao Yan was quiet when he heard the little exultation and tiredness within Feng Zunzha's voice. It seemed that this good friend, whom teacher had spoken of, had continuously searched for traces of him all these years. One had not lived in vain if one had such a good friend. Although teacher had been wrong about Han Feng back then, at the very least, he had chosen the right person as a good friend. Feng Zunzha. Feng Zunzha waved his hand and softly laughed, "You are his disciple. Please don't address me in this manner. The old me is called Feng Xian. I shall not speak of my relationship with him in detail. If you do not mind, you can also consider the old me as your teacher in the future." The disciple of an old friend greets old Feng. Xiao Yan was also not a foolish person. He naturally understood as hurriedly greeted him in a respectful manner. Feng Zunzha heartily laughed and nodded. He said, "Leave the matter today to me." After saying this, he did not wait for Xiao Yan to say anything more. He turned around for the first time and his gaze was thrown onto the cold face of Lei Zunzha. With a grin, he said, "Lei Zunzha, I can give in to you with regards to other matters today. However, the Wind Lightning Pavilion cannot touch Xiao Yan. This is a matter between the Wind Lightning Pavilion and him. If Feng Zunzha insists on interfering, it will likely affect the relationship between our two pavilions." Lei Zunzha looked deeply at Feng Zunzha as he spoke. If anything happens to him today, the final result will be a war between the two pavilions. Feng Zunzha replied. The decisiveness in his voice caused even Xiao Yan to tremble. Lei Zunzha frowned. His hand also slowly tightened on the armrest of his chair. He did not expect the free and easy Feng Zunzha to gain such a stern side with him today. Feng Zunzha was the one who had been famous for the longest amount of time among the four pavilions. If they were to really discuss him, his strength should be the greatest among the four Dou Zuns. Even Lei Zunzha was a little afraid of him. The implication of a war between the two pavilions was far too great. Even with Lei Zunzha's boldness, he did not dare to say it out loud. Yet. Just what relationship does this person have with Feng Zunzha? Why would Feng Zunzha protect him with all his ability? Lei Zunzha's eyes were clearly dark and solemn. However, these questions of his were something that everyone present wanted to know. Feng Zunzha's expression was like that of a rippleless well. Forget about this. Even if Xiao Yan was an extremely evil person, he would definitely not allow Xiao Yan to suffer any harm today. There was no reason for this other than that he was the disciple of that old fellow. Lei Zunzha's words are too arbitrary. The 3000 lightning movement is merely something that the little me came across outside of the Central Plains. Its origins are from abroad. How can you say that I secretly learned it? If that is the case, would that not mean that anyone who practices those Dou skills would all be seeking their own death? The 3000 lightning illusionary body, on the other hand, has been taken back by the Northern Pavilion chief. I think that he should be aware of this. Xiao Yan spoke in a deep voice. Fei Tian's face slightly sank. His eyes stared viciously at Xiao Yan. However, he did not dare to randomly attack this time around. Feng Zunzha was beside Xiao Yan. If he dared to attack, his ending would likely not be good. Fei Tian was still quite afraid of an expert like Feng Zunjie. Lei Zunjie's finger gently tapped on his armrest before finally sighing. He faintly said, "This matter is ultimately something that started between Xiao Yan and the Wind Lightning Pavilion. Why don't we do this? On account of Feng Zunjie's face, this matter will be handed to Fei Tian. Regardless of who is the victor between them, this matter will come to an end. The both of us will not intervene in this matter. What do you say?" Feng Zunjie's eyes were lowered when he heard this. He glanced at Fei Tian below before immediately shaking his head and laughing. There is too large a gap between Fei Tian's and Xiao Yan's seniority. Bullying the weak and the young is not a good reputation. Lei Zunjie's face also sank after he was rejected by Feng Zunjie. He said, "In that case, what does Feng Zunjie want to do? Do you want my Wind Lightning Pavilion to do nothing and let Xiao Yan off? I will definitely not do such a thing. Cuckoo, let's all talk nicely. Why don't we do this? Fei Tian's seniority is indeed much greater than Xiao Yan's. It is not good to get him to fight. Why don't we get someone from the younger generation to do so?" Jian Zunjie smiled and piped up when he saw that the atmosphere was not quite right. Does Jian Zunjie mean to get Qing Er and Xiao Yan to fight? Lei Zunjie narrowed his eyes. However, his gaze turned to Feng Qing Er in the arena. Jian Zunjie grinned and nodded. His eyes looked at Feng Qing Er with a deeper meaning and said, "This little girl is also not an ordinary person. There is no need for Lei Zunjie to conceal anything." Lei Zunjie glacéed at Xiao Yan when he spoke until the end. It was likely that he was also aware that Xiao Yan possessed an exceptionally strong spiritual body on him. Feng Zunjie hesitated for a moment when he heard this. He was similarly aware that Feng Qing Er was not an ordinary person. It was likely that even Qing Luan was no match for her among those of the same generation present. However, this situation was the limit the Wind Lightning Pavilion was willing to give in. If this failed, it was likely that there would not be anything left to discuss. While Feng Zunjie was hesitating, Feng Qing Er at the edge of the arena gently shifted her feet as she entered the stage. Her pretty eyes turned to Xiao Yan. Her clear cool voice carried a haughtiness as it slowly sounded. "Wind Lightning Pavilion's Feng Qing Er. Xiao Yan, do you dare accept this challenge?" Xiao Yan's eyes immediately paused on Feng Qing Er's well-proportioned, voluminous body. He smiled. A haughtiness surged out of his heart. He was naturally aware of the difficult situation Feng Zunjie was facing. Moreover, he was Yao Lao's disciple no matter how one put it. At the very least, he could not cause his teacher to lose face in front of this old friend. "I will accept your challenge." A loud clear laugh, filled with pride, sounded. Feng Zunjie was slightly startled when he saw that Xiao Yan did not show any signs of being timid. An admiration that was difficult to detect flashed over his face. He did not know how Xiao Yan had been accepted as a disciple of Yao Zunjie, who was extremely picky. However, at the very least, this courage was sufficient to get others to view him in a better light. With Feng Zunjie's old, sharp eyes, he was naturally able to tell that Feng Qing Er was extremely strong. Although Xiao Yan had broken through to the Dou Zone class, it was difficult to tell just who would win this battle. Feng Zunjie swept his gaze over Xiao Yan. He could vaguely sense the existence of a powerful spiritual body. However, he was disappointed that this spiritual ripple was not something that belonged to Yao Lao. "Be careful. If I guessed correctly, this woman's strength should have already advanced to the Dou Zone class after having soaked in the Heaven Mountain blood pool. Moreover, along with the fighting strength of her avatar, her strength has far exceeded that of an ordinary Dou Zone." Feng Zunjie turned his head and instructed him. "If you are no match for her, there is no need to clash with her. Feng Qing'er's talent is indeed top-notch among the younger generation I have met over these years. Even Qing Luan does experiences a gap with her. It is not embarrassing to lose to her. Of course, Xiao Yan nodded on the surface. However, his body had quietly straightened a little. Feng Qing'er possessed her haughtiness while Xiao Yan similarly possessed his pride. He had just met Feng Zunjie. Although the other party was indeed doing his best to protect him, Xiao Yan himself needed to perform in a way that was worthy of being valued by others. Xiao Yan did not flaunt anything through such a performance. All he wanted was to get other people to acknowledge Yao Lao's eyesight. This was especially the case in front of Feng Zunjie. Xiao Yan gently inhaled a breath of air. He clenched his hand, and an enormous dark black heavy Xian ruler flashed and appeared. Since his identity had been exposed, he was also able to use this heavy Xian ruler as he pleased. Xiao Yan's feet stepped through the empty air. He slowly walked down in front of the countless numbers of gazes. After which, his feet gently landed in the arena. He raised his eyes, looked at the colorfully clothed, haughty girl in front before using some strength to pick up the ruler's hilt. The surrounding atmosphere had gradually become tense following Xiao Yan landing in the arena. Anyone could sense the swords-drawn atmosphere within the stadium. Of course, Feng Qing'er might have a reputation of being strong, but Xiao Yan was not weak either. He might have swiftly rose recently, but the things he had done had caused others to feel extremely shocked. Ever since he had arrived in Tianbei City, he defeated the genius of the Hong clan, Hong Chen, and had killed Qin Yun and Hong Tian Xiao, two genuine Dou Zone class experts, as well as forcefully broke the 9 heavenly lightning prison formation that was set up by the 3 great elders of the Wind Lightning Northern Pavilion. In the end, he even successfully fled from Fei Tian's hands. Each of these actions could only be described as startling from an observer's point of view. Although most of the people knew that all of this was done with the help of a powerful spiritual body from the rumors, this did not completely erase Xiao Yan's abilities. Quite a number of people felt their blood boil when they thought of this. Xiao Yan and Feng Qing'er might represent the peak-level fighting strength between the younger generation of the northern region. Although Fei Tian felt extremely unwilling after hearing Lei Zunjie's words, he could only viciously stare at Xiao Yan, turn around, and return to his seat while feeling some anger. Lei Zunjie ignored Fei Tian, who was filled with anger. His gaze indifferently swept over Xiao Yan. Immediately, he glanced at Feng Zunjie and his eyebrows were involuntarily knit. Until this moment, he could not understand why Feng Zunjie would suddenly step forward and back Xiao Yan. Moreover, he was exceptionally insistent on his safety. There was basically no room for any negotiation. Just who is this brat to Feng Zunjie? Lei Zunjie muttered in his heart while feeling lost. He turned his head and glanced at Fei Tian by the side. He spoke in a faint voice, "What is there to be angry about? Qing'er is fighting in place of you, and even helped you avoid a bad reputation. That brat is extremely abominable. Even Elder Qin Yun has died by his hands. Don't tell me that we will just leave something like that be." Fei Tian spoke in a solemn voice. "If you feel that starting a war with the Falling Star Pavilion benefits us, we can also not let this matter rest," Lei Zunjie coldly chided. Fei Tian was dull when he heard this. Immediately, he unwillingly grit his teeth. Feng Zunjie's appearance had completely halted the Wind Lightning Pavilion's thoughts of killing Xiao Yan off. However, the blades are blind in this current exchange. It is unavoidable for one to be injured in battle. Even Feng Zunjie cannot say anything. A sinister look flashed across Lei Zunjie's eyes. He glanced at Feng Qing'er facing Xiao Yan in the arena while speaking in a low, deep voice. "What does chief mean?" Fei Tian was startled and immediately narrowed his eyes. I have already instructed Qing Er that it is fine to use a powerful strike if she has the opportunity. Although that brat has advanced to the Dou Zone class, he is unable to obtain help from that mysterious spiritual body. He is likely no match for Qing Er, moreover, injuries are commonplace in a fight. Lei Zunjie slowly led on. Feng Qing Er raised her pretty eyes slightly in the arena where there was a swords-drawn atmosphere. She looked at Xiao Yan in front of her. The other party's aura was indeed much stronger than when he was at the Heaven Mountain Blood Pool. No wonder he was full of confidence when he came to the Lightning Mountain. Although I do not know how you managed to get Feng Zunjie to stand behind you, you are likely too naive if you think that you can rely on this to behave atrociously on the Lightning Mountain without fear. Feng Qing Er's voice was still that clear and sweet. She was just like a phoenix that emitted a noble aura, which was difficult to hide. Xiao Yan appeared as though he did not hear her words. His eyes calmly observed her. The majestic Dou Qi within his body was like a snake waking up from hibernation as it slowly circulated. Following the surge of his Dou Qi, a powerful aura was quietly emitted, charging to the clouds. Based on my knowledge of you, it seems that you are someone who can only rely on external strength to create a reputation for yourself. It was the case with that spiritual body, and now it is the same with Feng Zunjie. In other words, this might perhaps be called using the strength of others to act in an arrogant manner. Today, however, this manner of yours is useless. Xiao Yan's calm manner caused Feng Qing Er eyebrows to become vertical as she coldly laughed. She did not like this person, who was of the same generation as her, revealing such a dislikable manner in front of her. A chill slowly surged on Feng Qing Er's extremely beautiful face. Her pretty eyes coldly glared at Xiao Yan as a majestic aura that was not inferior to him blasted forth with the sound of rumbling thunder like an erupting volcano. Her pretty eyes stared at Xiao Yan icily. A moment later, an ice-cold arc was lifted on Feng Qing Er's face. Believe me, you will regret that you said those words. Xiao Yan merely grinned. His soft voice contained a kind of tit-for-tat tone that did not give in even a little. I await you. After Xiao Yan's words were spoken, the coldness on Feng Qing Er's face became even denser. Her pretty eyes were also slowly shut. The atmosphere in the stadium suddenly became tense the instant she shut her eyes. A sharp killing intent that chilled one's heart swept through the air. Shua! Feng Qing Er shut her eyes for an instant before suddenly opening them. At this moment, her eyes had suddenly turned a strange green-silver color. The sharp, dense killing intent within them had reached a peak.